this video, we will look at 25 CET QA questions. The questions, all of them or almost all of them are on the easier side, which is normally the level of CET. But we will look at fast ways of solving the questions so that many times we don't have to write down too much. The calculations become easier and we are able to solve the questions quickly and get that competitive advantage. So let's get started with the first question. Here we have the greatest number which will divide 410, 751 and 1030, leaving a remainder 7 in each case. So here 410, 751 and 1030 are being divided. And with each of them, we are getting the remainder of 7. So let us break up each of them in terms of the remainder 7. So 410, we can write it as 403 plus 7. 751, we can write it as 744 plus 7. 1030, we can write it as 1023 plus 7. Now 7 will be the remainder in each case, which means the other values, 403, 744 and 1023. These will be divisible by the number that we are dividing by. If 7 is the remainder, 7 is the part that is remaining, which is not divisible, then the other part, 403, 744 and 1023, these have to be divisible by the number that we are dividing by. So now, we want the greatest number which will divide these. The greatest number by which all of these three will be divisible, which of course means the HCF of these numbers. HCF of 403, 744 and 1023. Now, rather than finding the HCF of these numbers technically, which will take time, we can be smart and take advantage of the options. So if all of these numbers are divisible by something, and we want the greatest number that they are divisible by, let's start with the greatest number that is there in the options, which is 37. If we try dividing 403 by 37, we will see that it is not divisible. 37 into 1 is 37, 3 is remaining, 33. 33 is not divisible by 37. So 403 is not divisible. And therefore 37 cannot be the correct option. All these three numbers have to be divisible by something. We are trying to find the HCF. So of course 37 will not be correct. So now we'll try the next option which has the next greatest number, which is 31. So 403 divided by 31. Okay, we can see we have 31 into 1. And then we have 93, 31 into 3. So 403 is divisible by 31. If we try for 744. 744 divided by 31. So 31 into 2, 62. And then we have 124, 31 into 4 is 124. So this is also divisible. And if you look at 1023 divided by 31. 31 into 3, 93. And again 93, so we have another 3. So 1023 is also divisible by 31. So this was much faster just to check the options. And now we can say that 31 will be the HCF of these three numbers. Out of the different options, that is the greatest number by which all of them are divisible. And therefore the answer will be option C. How many numbers lying between 1 and 500 are divisible by 13? So here we just have to look at the table of 13. The first number that we will get between 1 and 500, which is divisible by 13, is of course 13 into 1, which is 13. The next we will get will be 13 into 2, 26. And it will continue like this. Now we have to figure out the stopping point, the last number in that given range, which will be divisible by 13. So here we should play around with numbers a little bit. We should do a bit of trial and error. So if you look at the basic table of 13, if you look at 13 into 4, 13 into 4 is 52. So 13 into 40 will be 520, which is very close to 500, the upper limit of the range. And therefore, if 13 into 40 is 520, if we go one down, if we come to one multiple back, 13 into 39, that will be 520 minus 13, which will be 507. Now we'll go one more multiple back, 13 into 38. So 507 minus 13, which will be 494. And now we can see that 494 will be the last number in the given range, which is divisible by 13. and that will be 13 into 38. So how many multiples of 13 are we getting? From 13 into 1 till 13 into 38, we are getting 38 multiples, and therefore the answer will be 38. 38 numbers in the given range which are divisible by 13. 2/3 of 1/7 of a number is 87.5% of 240. What is the number? Very simple question. We just have to form the equation and do the calculation. So first of all, we have 2/3, 2 by 3. Of means multiplication. 1/7 is 1 by 7. Of again multiplication. And then we have the number. This number we can take it to be n. And this is, which means this is equal to 87.5%. 87.5% is 7 by 8. If you know your percentages, this will directly be 7 by 8. Of 240, so into 240. And now just do the calculations. So 7 by 8 into 240, 240 by 8 will be 30. 7 into 30 will be 210. Now 2 by 3 on the other side will become 3 by 2. And 1 by 7 on this other side will become 7. So now if we simplify this, 210 divided by 2, that is 105. 3 into 7, that is 21. Now we can make this easy by breaking up 105 in terms of 100 plus 5. Because it's very easy to multiply with 100. 21 into 100 is 2100. 21 into 5 is 105. And adding these up, we get 2205, which is there in option B. A bank offers 5% compound interest calculated on half-yearly basis. A customer deposits 1600 rupees each on 1st January and 1st July of a year. At the end of the year, the amount he would have gained by way of interest is how much? So we have to find the interest. We are doing compounding, and this is on a half-yearly basis. So we know that the rate that is given, 5%, that is for the full year. So when we are doing compounding on a half-yearly basis, the rate for half the year will be half of a full year rate. So if full year is 5%, half year will be 2.5%. Now what is 2.5% in terms of a fraction? Compare it with 25%. 25% is equal to 1 by 4, 1/4. Now 2.5% is 25% divided by 10. So we will get 1/4 divided by 10, which means 1 by 40. If 25% is 1/4, 2.5% will be 1 by 40. Now, here we are talking about the time period of 1 year, but we are doing compounding on a half-yearly basis. So let us break up the 1 year into half a year, half a year. So let's look at the first half year, and then we look at the second half year. Now in the first half year, what will we have? We will have 1600 rupees. Okay, that is the principal that we will have, the money that we will have deposited. And on this 1600 rupees, we will get 2.5% interest. So we just have to calculate 2.5% of this, which is 1/40th of this. 1600 divided by 40, that will be 40. That will be our interest for the first half year. Now in the second half year, how much money will we have? 1600 we had already deposited at the beginning of the year, in January. Now in July, we are depositing another 1600. And finally, the 40 rupees interest that we had got in the first half of the year, that is also a part of the total amount that we have now. So we will get interest on that as well through compound interest. And now 2.5% of all of these will give us the interest in the second half of the year. So 2.5% of 1600 is 40. 2.5% of 1600 again, 40 again. And 2.5% of 40, 1/40th of 40 is 1. And now we can calculate the total compound interest. 40 plus 40 plus 40 is 120. And then we have another 1. So total we are getting is 121, which is in option C. A train 125 meter long passes a man running at 5 km per hour in the same direction in which the train is going in 10 seconds. The speed of the train is what? So here, first of all, we can find out the relative speed. Two objects are moving. Train is also moving, man is also moving. So we will get the relative speed. And when the train is crossing the man, the relative distance will just be the length of the train. Man is an object of negligible width, so the only distance that will be relevant will just be the length of the train. So the length of the train, 125 meters, when we divide it by the time taken by the train to cross the man, which is 10 seconds, that gives us the relative speed of the two objects. 125 by 10 meters per second. Okay, so if we simplify this, this will become 25 by 2 meters per second. But we can see that the other speed given in the question is in kilometers per hour. And the options are also in kilometers per hour. So let us convert this to kilometers per hour by multiplying with 18 by 5. So when we do this calculation, we will get 45 kilometers per hour. And of course, this is the relative speed. Now here they are traveling in the same direction. So we know that relative speed in the same direction is the difference in the speeds of the two objects, which means it is the speed of the train minus the speed of the man. Because the train is the faster object, of course. So speed of the train minus the speed of the man, and speed of the man is 5 kilometers per hour. So that will be the relative speed, and that is equal to 45 kilometers per hour. So we will get that the speed of the train is 45 plus 5, which is 50 kilometers per hour, which is there in option C. We could have also thought of it this way, that relative speed in the same direction gives us how much faster is the faster object. So if we have 45 kilometer per hour relative speed, that means the train is 45 kilometer per hour faster than the man. So if the man is 5, train will be 5 plus 45, which is 50 kilometers per hour. A shopkeeper buys 50 pencils for rupees 100 and sells 45 pencils for rupees 90. Find his gain or loss percent. So here we cannot compare unequal quantities. We need to compare the cost price of X number of pencils and the selling price of X number of pencils. The quantities have to be the same. So here we can, to make it simple, we can just come down to the quantity of 1. We can find the cost price of 1 pencil and the selling price also of 1 pencil. Same quantity, then we can compare and we can find the profit or loss percent. So if the cost price of 50 pencils is equal to rupees 100, then we can say that the cost price of 1 pencil will be 100 by 50, which will be rupees 2. And similarly, if the selling price of 45 pencils is equal to rupees 90, then we can say that the selling price of 1 pencil will be 90 by 45, which will again be rupees 2. So cost price of 1 pencil is also 2. Selling price of 1 pencil is also 2. Cost price is equal to the selling price for the same quantity, which means there is no profit and there is no loss as well. We are buying at a particular price, we are selling at the same price, we are not making any profit or loss, and therefore the answer is option E. Two stations A and B are 110 km apart on a straight line. One train starts from A at 7 a.m. and travels towards B at 20 km per hour. Another train starts from B at 8 a.m. and travels towards A at a speed of 25 km per hour. At what time will they meet? So here the starting times are different. First train is starting at 7 a.m. Second train is starting at 8 a.m. So we have to come to that point in time when both of the trains will be moving. So we can say that from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., in that time period of 1 hour, the distance that the first train is covering is how much? So the speed of the first train is 20 kilometers per hour. So in the time of 1 hour, it will cover the distance of 20 kilometers. And the trains are traveling towards each other. So the first train will reduce the gap between them by 20 kilometers. And now the distance between them at 8 a.m. At 8 a.m., the distance between them will be how much? Initial distance between them was 110 kilometers. Out of that, the first train has already covered 20 kilometers from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. So now the distance between them will be 110 minus 20, which will be equal to 90 kilometers. And now what is their relative speed? Since they are traveling towards each other, which is in opposite directions, their relative speed will be the sum of their speeds. 20 kilometer per hour plus 25 kilometer per hour, which is equal to 45 kilometer per hour. And therefore, the time taken to meet will be the distance separating them, which is 90 kilometers, divided by the relative speed of 45 kilometers per hour. And therefore, we will get 2 hours. Now, this relative speed, we started calculating from 8 a.m. because from 8 a.m., both of them were moving towards each other. So the time of 2 hours will be 2 hours after 8 a.m., which will of course be 10 a.m., which is in option C. 2 trains running in opposite directions cross a man standing on the platform in 27 seconds and 17 seconds respectively, and they cross each other in 23 seconds. The ratio of their speeds is what? So here we can take some variables, we can form some simple equations and get the ratio. So we have that the first train takes 27 seconds to cross a man on the platform. Man is just standing on the platform. So man is a stationary object and man has negligible width. So here the distance that we will consider will just be the length of the train. When a train is crossing a man, the distance is just the length of the train. So let's take the length of this first train to be x meters. So that will be the distance. Now we know that distance is time into speed. Time here is 27 seconds. And let the speed of the first train be a meters per second. So we will get x is equal to 27a. Now the second train crosses the man in 17 seconds. So again, the distance will be the length of the second train. Let the length of the second train be y meters. And this distance is equal to time into speed. Time is 17 seconds. Let the speed of the second train be b meters per second. So y is equal to 17b. And then they cross each other, which means the trains cross each other in 23 seconds. When 2 trains are crossing each other, the distance will be the sum of the lengths of the 2 trains. Length of the first train is x. Length of the second train is y. So the distance will be x plus y. And distance is equal to time into speed. Time is 23 seconds. And the trains will be moving towards each other because they are traveling in opposite directions. So the relative speed will be the sum of the speeds, which will be a plus b. And now we can substitute x and y. X is 27a and y is 17b. And on the right hand side, we have 23a plus 23b. So we'll get 4a is equal to 6b. A by b is equal to 6 by 4, which is equal to 3 by 2. And therefore, we can say that a is to b will be equal to 3 is to 2. That will be the answer, which is option C. Now, keep in mind, there is also an option 2 is to 3. But here we have to follow the order given in the question. Okay, question is giving the values in a particular order for the first train and the second train. So we have to follow that same order when we are finding the ratio. So answer should be 3 is to 2. The value of a washing machine depreciates at the rate of 10% every year. If its present value is rupees 8748, then what was the price of the washing machine 3 years ago? So let the price of the washing machine 3 years ago be x. So it was x. And then every year it is depreciating by 10%, which means decreasing by 10%. Now, if it is becoming 10% less, that means it is becoming 90% of what it was. So if it was x 3 years ago, next year it will become 90% of that. And then after 1 more year, again it will reduce by 10%. So again into 90%. Third year also again decrease of 10%. So again into 90%. And that will give us the present value, which is rupees 8748. Now, what is 90%? 90% is 9 by 10. 90 by 100, which is 9 by 10. So we have 9 by 10 into 9 by 10 into 9 by 10. 9 into 9 into 9, the cube of 9 is 729. And 10 into 10 into 10 is of course 1000. And this is equal to 8748. So here we just have to do a fairly simple calculation. 8748 we have to divide by 729. So first of all, 729 will go one time. Out of 874, we will have 729. And we will be left with 145. And then 1458. 729 into 2 is 1458. So we will get 12 here. And then 12 into 1000 will give us 12,000. So the answer will be 12,000, which is in option A. 9 people had dinner in a restaurant. 8 of them spent rupees 120 each. And the 9th one spent rupees 80 more than the average expenditure of all 9. What is the total money spent by them? Now let the average expenditure of all 9 be A. And now if we think about the total money spent by them. There are 9 people in total. Average expenditure of all 9 we have taken to be A. So the number of people into their average expenditure of A, that will give us the total amount of money spent by them. Number of values into the average of those values. And we can also find the total money in terms of the expenditure of 8 people plus the expenditure of the 9th people. Because we have that for 8 of them, we have 120 rupees each. Which means for those 8 people, the average is 120. So their total will be 8 into 120. Plus the expenditure of the 9th person, which is 80 rupees more than the average expenditure of all 9 people. Average of all 9 people is A. And for this 9th person, the expenditure will be 80 more than that, which is A plus 80. So in this way, we can represent the total money spent by them in 2 ways. So they will be equal. And now we can solve this equation. So here, what we can do is, we can see that we will have 9A minus A, which is 8A on the left hand side. Right hand side, we will have 8 into 120 plus 80. Now we can divide by 8. So we will get A is equal to 120 plus 10, which means A is equal to 130. And now the total money spent by them is 9 into A. So we will get 9 into 130. 9 into 130 is a simple calculation. 9 into 13, you can think of it as 9 into 10 plus 3. 90 plus 27, which is 117. And therefore we have 1170, which is option D. Find the compound interest on rupees 9,500 in 2 years at 8% rate of interest per annum, the interest being compounded half yearly. Here we can see again we have half yearly compounding. So if it is 8% for the full year, it will be half of that, 4% for half a year. And we have time period of 2 years, which will be equal to 4 half years. Now, if we solve this technically using the formula, the calculation will be very difficult, very time consuming. So that will not be the best method. When we observe the options, we can see that the options are not at all close together. So that tells us that we can easily approximate the calculations. We can make the calculations easy by approximating. And that way we will be able to find the correct option very quickly. So let us take some liberties with the approximation and let's look at each half year. So if we start off with the first half year, the principal that we are starting with is 9,500 rupees. And now the interest that we will get will be 4% of this. Now 1% of 9,500 is 95, which we can take to be approximately 100. Let us find the approximate interest. No need to calculate exactly because the options are not close together. So 1% of 9,500 is 95, approximately 100. So 4% will be approximately 100 into 4, which is 400. And now if we come to the second half year, now the total money that we will have will be 9,500 plus 400, which is 9,900. And interest will be 4% of that. 1% is 99, approximately 100. So 4% will be approximately 400. If you look at the third half year, 9,900 plus 400, that will be 10,300. 1% is 103, approximately 100. So 4% will be approximately 400. And same thing for the fourth half year. So you don't even have to write everything down. You can just observe that we will get 400 for each of the 4 half years. So in the fourth half year, we will have 10,300 plus 400, which is 10,700. 1% is 107, approximately 100. So 4% is approximately 400. And now the total interest is approximately 4 times of 400, which is 1600. Just mark that option which is closest to 1600, which is option B. So this way, just by observing and thinking about the options and thinking about approximation, we could have easily seen that all the interest for each of the 4 half years will be somewhere around 400, approximately 400. And therefore, the option had to be that option which is closest to 4 times of 400, 1600. A man sold his book at rupees 891, thereby gaining 1/10 of its cost price. The cost price is what? So here we have a gain, we have a profit. So what is the formula which involves cost price and profit along with the selling price? Because we have the selling price. So cost price plus the profit is equal to the selling price. Now we have that profit is 1/10 of the cost price. So profit is cost price divided by 10 and selling price is 891 rupees. So we will have cost price plus 1/10 of the cost price, which is 11/10 of the cost price. This is equal to 891. So we can easily calculate the cost price. So that will be 810, which is there in option A. There are 50 boys in a class with an average weight of 45 kgs. When one boy leaves the class, the average reduces by 100 grams. Find the weight of the boy who left the class. Now, if we solve it technically, this will be time consuming because of the calculations. So let's solve it using the method of behavior of averages. One boy is leaving the class, one value is leaving the group, and the average of the group is decreasing, which means the value that is leaving the group must be more than the average of the group. If it was same as the average of the group would have remained the same. So it must be more than the average. It must be taking away more than the average so that the average of the group decreases. So if we consider as a starting point that the boy who left, if his weight was 45 kgs, then the average of the group would not have changed. It would have remained the same. But because average is reducing, the boy is leaving with more than the average. The weight of the boy was more than the average weight of the group. So it will be 45 plus something. Now plus what? Now how much more from 45 kgs is the weight of the boy who is leaving the group? That will be the same as how much the weight of the remaining people in the group is decreasing. Because for the remaining people in the group, the weight will be decreasing because the boy who is leaving, he is leaving with extra compared to the average of the group. He is leaving with more than the average. So when we think about this, how much more than 45? Think about the remaining people in the group. 50 boys were there. One boy leaves. So now 49 people will be remaining in the group. And for these 49 people, average will be reducing by 100 grams. 100 grams is 0.1 kgs. So average will be reducing by 0.1 kgs, which means the total reduction will be 49 into 0.1 kgs. 49 people, it is reducing by average of 0.1. So total reduction is 49 into 0.1, which means that is the total extra that the boy who is leaving took from the average. So the weight of the boy who is leaving will be 45 plus 49 into 0.1, which is 45 plus 4.9, which is of course 49.9, which is there in option C. So this is all we had to do. If we understand the concept of behavior of averages properly, we just had to do this simple calculation. 30 pencils and 75 pens were bought for rupees 510. If the average price of the pencil was rupees 2, find the average price of a pen. Now this is a question in which there was a mistake with respect to the options. None of the options had the correct answer. Or maybe there was a mistake in the question so that the values in the question did not corroborate, they did not satisfy the answer which was given as the correct answer. Anyway, we will solve the given question and we will see what should have been the correct answer. So we have 30 pencils and average price of a pencil was rupees 2. So the total cost of 30 pencils would have been 30 into 2. So this is for pencils. Now if we add the total cost of the pens, there are 75 pens. If we take the average cost of one pen to be X, then the cost of 75 pens will be 75 into X. And now the cost of the pencils plus the cost of the pens, that will give us the total cost of 510 rupees. So we'll get 75X is 510 minus 60, which is 450. So X will be 450 divided by 75, which will be 6. So that should be the correct answer, which is average price of a pen is 6 rupees. So none of the given options were actually correct. There was a mistake in this question. In how many different ways can the letters of the word second be arranged? So here, very simply, there are 6 different letters, 6 different objects. We know that 6 different objects can be arranged in a straight line in 6 factorial ways. 6 factorial is 720 and therefore the answer will be 720. But if you want a recap of the basic logic here, there are 6 objects, 6 letters. So we will arrange them in 6 places. Now for the first place, how many ways are there to fill the first place? Any of the 6 letters can be taken in the first place. So we have 6 ways for the first place. Now 5 letters would be remaining. Any of the 5 remaining letters can be there in the second place. So 5 ways for the second place. And then 4 ways for the third place. Then 3, then 2, and then 1. So we get 6 factorial, which is equal to 720, which is option A. This was a question where you did not even have to put pen to paper. Very, very basic question where you could have solved it within 5 seconds. A 60-liter mixture of milk and water contains 10% water. How much water must be added to make the water 20% in the mixture? Now here, we have milk and water. Total is 60 liters, out of which 10% is water. 10% of 60 is of course 6. So at the beginning, we have 6 liters of water and therefore the remaining will be milk. 60 minus 6, the remaining 54 liters will be milk. Now what is happening is water is being added. So that water becomes 20% of the new total. Here you have to observe that only water is being added. Nothing is changing for milk. Milk is not being added, milk is not being removed. And therefore the quantity of milk will remain the same. It was 54, it will still be 54. Water will be added. Quantity of water will increase. So the total quantity will also increase. But quantity of milk will remain the same. Now at the end, water is 20% of the total mixture. And therefore milk has to be the remaining 80% of the total. If water is 20%, milk will be the remaining 80%. So we can say that for the final mixture, 80% of the total will be 54 liters for milk. 80% will be 54 liters. And therefore, what will be 20%? 80% if we divide by 4, we will get 20%. And therefore, 54 when we divide by 4, we will get 13.5. So this 20% of the final mixture will be 13.5 liters. Now, how did 6 become 13.5? When 7.5 is added to 6, then 6 becomes 13.5. So we can say that 7.5 liters of water were added and therefore the answer is option D. So Suresh is borrowing 36,000 rupees. That is the principal. Rate of interest is 6%. We have simple interest. Time period is 4 years. So we can find the total simple interest. That is principal of 36,000 into the rate of 6 into the time of 4 years divided by 100. So if we calculate this, we will get 360 into 6 into 4. Now what is 36 into 6? 36 into 6, that is 216. And 216 into 4, that is 864. And then we will also have a 0. So we will get 8640. And now what we need to find is interest along with the principal amount. Which means we need to find the total amount that Suresh will be paying. Interest along with the principal. So the final amount will be the principal plus the interest. Principal was 36,000 plus the interest of 8640. So that will be 44,640. That should have been the correct answer. But that is not there in the option. So that was another mistake. If Suresh borrows 36,000 rupees from Mahesh at rate of interest 6% simple interest, at the end of 4 years, how much interest Suresh has to pay along with the principal amount? Now, this is another question in which there is a mistake. None of the given options is correct. So let us see what should have been the correct answer. Now, Suresh is borrowing 36,000 rupees, that is the principal. We have simple interest, 6%, and time period is 4 years. So if we calculate the simple interest, that is the principal of 36,000 into the rate of 6% into the time of 4 years divided by 100. Now 36 into 6 is 216. 216 into 4, that is 864. And then we will also have a 0. So 8640. So this is the interest that Suresh would have to pay. Along with the principal, this is the interest that he would have to pay. So this should have been the correct answer, 8640. Which of the following words can be written in 120 different ways? Now again, a very simple question on PNC. We have to think 120 is 5 factorial, 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So we will get 120 ways when we are arranging 5 different objects in a straight line. 5 different objects can be arranged in a straight line in 5 factorial ways. So that will give us 120 ways. So we simply have to scan the options and look for that option in which the word has 5 different letters. And we will get that immediately in the first option, WATER. 5 different letters which can be arranged in a straight line in 5 factorial ways, which is 120 ways. And therefore the answer is option A. So we did not again have to write down anything for this question. We could have solved it mentally. 2 ships are sailing in the sea on the 2 sides of a lighthouse. The angles of elevation of the top of the lighthouse observed from the ships are 30 degrees and 45 degrees respectively. If the lighthouse is 100 meters high, find the distance between the 2 ships. Let's say that this is the lighthouse, which is 100 meters high. Now the 2 ships are on the 2 sides of the lighthouse. So one ship is on one side and one ship is on the other side. Now let's say that this ship is subtending angle of 30 degrees. Angle of elevation is 30 degrees here with the top of the lighthouse. So if we connect it with the top of the lighthouse, this angle that we will get will be 30 degrees. So let's also connect the bottoms to make the triangle. And here the angle of elevation is 30 degrees. And of course, lighthouse is considered to be vertical. So this angle will be 90 degrees. And similarly for the other ship, when we note down the angle of elevation, that will be 45 degrees. And connecting the bottoms, we will get 90 degrees for the lighthouse and then 45 degrees for the angle of elevation with the ship to the top of the lighthouse. Now, very simply, we can say that in this second triangle, we have 90 degrees and 45 degrees. So this third angle will also be 45 degrees. Now in a triangle, when 2 angles are the same, then the sides opposite them will also be equal. So these 2 sides will be equal. Now this side is 100, which is the lighthouse. So this other side will also be 100. And similarly, in this other triangle, we have 90 degrees and 30 degrees. So the third angle will be 60 degrees. Now we know that in a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle, opposite sides are in the ratio 1 is to root 3 is to 2. So opposite 30 degrees, if we have 100, then opposite 60 degrees, we will have 100 root 3. And therefore, the distance between the 2 ships, that will be, see, one ship is here and another ship is here, S1 and S2. So the distance between them will be 100 root 3 plus 100. Root 3 is 1.73 approximately. So 100 into 1.73 plus 100. So 173 plus 100, which is of course 273. And therefore the answer will be option C. In an examination, the average of marks for all candidates was 50. it was later found out that for 100 candidates, marks were wrongly computed as 90 instead of 60. After correcting the data, the average of marks for all candidates came down to 45. The total number of candidates who appeared at the examination was. Now let the total number of candidates be n. That is what we have to find. What is happening? Average of marks for all candidates was 50, but it was later found that for 100 candidates, marks were wrongly computed as 90 instead of 60. So it should have been 60. It was wrongly calculated as 90. So let us find out now when we make the correction. Okay, the data is being corrected. So when we make the correction, what will be the change? So 90, which was wrong, will now be reduced to 60. 90 to 60, the reduction will be of 30. Okay, so if we find out the total reduction in the marks, this reduction of 30 marks will be for 100 candidates. All these 100 candidates, their marks will be reduced from 90 to 60. So for all these 100 candidates, their marks will be reduced by 30. So the total reduction will be 100 into 30. And now we can also find the same total reduction in terms of the average. So now, average for all the candidates was 50. And after the correction, the average for all the candidates again is becoming 45. Now the total number of candidates is n. And if we multiply this total number of candidates with the value by which their average is decreasing, then we will get the total reduction. So by how much is the average decreasing? From 50 to 45, it is decreasing by 5. So for all the candidates, all the n candidates, the average is decreasing by 5. So the number of candidates into their decrease in average will give us the total decrease, the total reduction. And now we can solve this equation and we will get that n is equal to 600. Ultimately a simple calculation if we solve it logically instead of using the formulas very technically. And therefore the answer is option E. In this question, we have to find the number of factors of 70 to 100. So let us prime factorize 70 to 100 first. We can simply break it up as 72 into 100 first. Now 72 is 8 into 9 and 100 is 4 into 25. 8 into 4 will be 32, which is 2 to the power 5. 9 will be 3 to the power 2 and 25 will be 5 to the power 2. Now we can find out the total number of factors. We know the method. This is a basic method. If here power is 5, then we will get 5 plus 1. Into power is 2, so we will get 2 plus 1. Power is 2, so again 2 plus 1. So we will get 6 into 3 into 3. 6 into 9, which is equal to 54. And therefore the answer is option C. N is equal to 1421 into 1423 into 1425. What is the remainder when n is divided by 12? So here, all the three numbers that are being multiplied, all of them are very, very close. So let's find the remainder for one of them, and then we'll be able to easily find the remainder for the others. So let's find the remainder when 1421 is divided by 12. How do we find this? Let us just break up 1421. If you look at 1421, break it up in terms of multiple of 12. So first of all, out of 1421, 1200 will definitely be divisible by 12. And then after that, what is remaining? 221 is remaining. 1421 minus 1200, 221 is remaining. Out of that, 120 is definitely divisible by 12. So from 221, remove 120. And that will give you 101. Now from 101, 96 is divisible by 12. And now 5 will be remaining. And that 5 is of course not divisible by 12. So that 5 will be the remainder here. Now we can say that for 1421, if the remainder is 5, then next we have 1423, which is 2 more than 1421. So the remainder will also be 2 more, which is 2 more than 1421. So the remainder will also be 2 more. 5 plus 2, it will be 7. And next we have 1425, which is 2 more than 1423. So remainder will also be 2 more than 7, which is equal to 9. So the final remainder we will get through 5 into 7 into 9. Now 5 into 7 is 35. So 35 into 9. Now 35 when we divide by 12, the remainder is what? 12 into 2 is 24. After that 11 is remaining. So remainder will be 11. So we get 11 into 9, which is 99. 99 when we divide by 12, out of that 96 will be divisible and 3 will be remaining. And therefore the final remainder will be 3, which is there in option D. If 20% of x is equal to y, what is the value of y percent of 20 in terms of x? A simple question which we can make even simpler if we understand a basic fact about percentages. If you look at y percent of 20, which is what we have to find in terms of x. See, y percent of 20 is nothing but 20% of y. Y percent of 20 is the same as 20% of y. Because y percent of 20 will be y by 100 into 20. 20% of y will be 20 by 100 into y. So ultimately they will be the same. So now if we have been given that 20% of x is equal to y, we can focus on finding 20% of y. So let us multiply both the sides with 20%. So 20% of 20% of x will be equal to 20% of y. Now 20% is 1 by 5. So we will get 1/5 into 20% of x is equal to 20% of y. 1/5 of 20%, 20 by 5 is 4. So we will get 4%. 4% of x is equal to 20% of y. And 20% of y is the same as y percent of 20. And therefore y percent of 20 will be 4% of x, which is there in option B. What is the smallest number which when increased by 5 is completely divisible by 8, 11 and 24? So first of all, let us find the smallest number which is completely divisible by 8, 11 and 24. Smallest number which is a multiple of all three. So of course that will be the LCM, which is the least common multiple. Now to find the LCM of this, instead of doing it very technically, we can think that for 8 and 24, the LCM will be 24. 24 itself is already a multiple of 8. And of course, it is a multiple of itself. So 8 and 24, LCM will be 24. And now we also have to include 11. 11 is not included in 24. So now we will multiply with 11. 8 and 24, LCM was 24. But we also have to include 11 in the LCM, so we will multiply with 11. 24 into 11 is 24 into 10 plus 1, which is 240 plus 24, which is 264. So 264 is the smallest number which is divisible by all these three numbers. But we want the smallest number which will be divisible by all three when it is increased by 5. So from 264, we will subtract 5, which will give us 259. So now 259 is the smallest number which when we increase it by 5, it will become divisible by all three of the given numbers. And therefore the answer will be 259, which is option C. If the cost price is 96% of the selling price, then what is the profit percentage? So cost price CP is equal to 96% of the selling price SP. So CP is equal to 96 by 100 into the SP. So we'll get a ratio of CP and SP. CP by SP is equal to 96 by 100. And we can cancel off with 4 to simplify that. So we will get 24 upon 25. Now we need the profit percentage. So we can just assume CP to be 24 and SP to be 25 from this ratio. And then we can say that from 24 to 25, the profit is of 1. SP minus CP, 25 minus 24, profit is 1. So the profit percent will be the profit of 1 upon the CP of 24 and then into 100. And 1 by 24 corresponds to 4.16%. So we will just mark that option which is closest to that, which is 4.2%, which is option C.